rebellion, but now God has given them a second chance. God has given them the go-ahead to build this structure so that he could come down and dwell in their midst. And so this community, they're so exuberant over this reconciliation with God, this second chance that they leap at the opportunity to please him. They leap at this opportunity to do what is in their hearts. However, there's always the possibility that they might not do it right. You ever give a job to somebody and then you're not really sure if they're going to do it right? So you kind of hover over them, micromanage them, cross your fingers, plan to redo the job afterwards anyways. That could have been that case. They could have botched the job on the tabernacle. They could show up one day and then just slack off for the rest of the week. They could make the tabernacle with the wrong intentions. They could fail to follow every step of the blueprints God had spent chapter after chapter giving to them. So there's this anticipation I want us to grasp here in chapters 35 and 36. That as we read this, there's this anticipation of not knowing what the outcome will be. Can they do it? Can they build the tabernacle to the exact high specifications that God sent to them? Will they lapse into disobedience? Will they do a shabby job? And beyond that, beyond the question of materials and manpower and the hours that it's going to take, is will this stiff-necked people, remember that's their key defining trait, they are stiff-necked, stubborn people. They're prone to rebellion. Will these people have the hearts to give freely to God? Will they even have the heart? Will they do it reluctantly? Will they do it half-heartedly because they don't really care about it? I think we all have times when we do something we don't really want to do because we feel obligated to do it. Tomorrow morning, I will have to change my cat's litter box. I will not be doing it with a happy heart. I will not be doing it leaping with joy. I will do it because it is an obligation and because there is a smell factor that needs to be addressed. But there are times where you are passionate about doing something because you are excited to do the work and you're excited to do it for somebody. And so that's a big difference. You can be doing the same job, but it's a huge difference in attitude and behavior. Do we have the hearts when it comes to time to give to God? Do we really have the heart? Or are we just doing it out of a sense of obligation or because our arm is twisted behind our back? Well, one thing as we look at this construction of the tabernacle, one thing I want us to consider is this question: couldn't have God just built the tabernacle himself? Have you ever really thought about that? After all, God is providing them every morning manna and quail. He makes it pop out of the air. He makes it come right to them. In 6 days, God created the entire cosmos. Couldn't God have made a tent? It's surely not beyond his ability. And then he could have made it to his exact specifications. So why didn't he? Why didn't he just make this tent of meeting? They wake up one morning and there it is. That's because God invites Israel to partake in the ministry of the Lord. It's what he does for us. God says, listen guys, I could make this tent easily, but I want to give you the opportunity to participate in its contribution and in its building. The end result of this won't change for God. Whether or not the people decide they're going to contribute or not, the tent's going to get built. God will make it happen if the people won't. But the real change is God will change some hearts. He will include people in this, and he will bless them because they're part of this ministry. And that's something I hope that people understand in the church, that God doesn't need us. I know that's a really weird thing for a pastor to say. He doesn't. He could do everything. He could open up every heart in the world to the gospel. But he opens his arms and he says, I want to include you in my ministry. I want to give you the opportunity to join me in this great work. And so he creates bit by bit all these little opportunities to join him in the work of the Lord. And so this first step that God invites the people to do is to gather together the necessary materials. You can't build something if you don't have the things to build it with. And we get actually a shopping list here. There's a lot. There's gold, silver, bronze, yarn, linen, goat hair, ram skins. You guys have a lot of those lying around, I'm sure. acacia wood, oil, spices, onyx stones, jewels. That's a lot of stuff. I've heard from a lot of people over the last couple years that building projects in the pandemic era have been a nightmare. Have you seen the lumber costs? Sure, you've heard of that. Lumber costs have skyrocketed. The supply chain is disrupted. Starting any sort of major building project, some people are just saying, I'm just not going to. I can't even ensure that I'm going to have the right materials so that when the workers show up, they'll have something to build with. And so there's that fear, and they just kind of put it off because maybe it'll be more stable down the road. So don't start a building project if you don't have the materials. And going into these chapters, we should not assume that Israel had the materials, or even if they did, that they would be willing to let them go. Some people like to hold what they have very tight. It is their stuff. They don't like to share. They certainly don't like to give. And so maybe Israel will be like that. Well, to gather together these materials, the Bible tells us Moses then assembled a team of telemarketers who ran pledge drives all summer long. You guys just weren't paying attention. It was in there. He promised that every donor would get a free tote bag and an umbrella with every donation to the tabernacle. He said the top givers would get a brick stamped with their family name, and it would be laid out in the alcove of the tabernacle. It was amazing. And for those who were still being a little too stingy, he proposed a tax upon everybody's possessions so that they would have to contribute. Well, actually, Moses did none of that. He is the worst fundraiser I've ever seen, according to a Presbyterian perspective, right? If he was on a committee and we needed to raise stuff, he'd be going like, let's just tell people they have the opportunity. All right, let's go get lunch. And we're going, no, we've got to have like all these things in place. But this is what he does. He says, I'm just going to tell the people they have the opportunity, not even the obligation. The opportunity to freely give to God, and we'll see what happens. And the wild thing is, this totally worked. 2 Corinthians 9:7 says, the Lord loves a cheerful giver. Not the Lord loves a giver. The Lord doesn't love a giver who's giving reluctantly with a clenched fist that has to go one finger at a time and then drop something in the offering plate. The Lord doesn't love a giver who gives and then for the rest of the week grouses to everybody like, oh man, I had to give up this. The Lord loves a giver who gives cheerfully. And we see this right here. These Hebrews line up, flock to give their donations. They are so excited. They are cheerful. They are totally happy to share what they have for the creation of God's dwelling place. They knew what they're doing right then would last beyond their lifetimes and do something for God that would live for eternity. And so they were happy and cheerful to do it. In fact, we read in chapter 36, I always get a chuckle out of this, that the construction workers, there's so much coming in, so many donations, that the construction workers go up to Moses like, Moses, you got to tell them to stop. We've got too much stuff, too many hot dogs, too many canopies, all this stuff for the concert. We got to stop it. Got to tell these people to just, we got enough. And Moses tells the people, he makes it an order, stop giving. Have you ever heard a church say that? Any ministry ever say that? You got too much, please stop giving at this point, we're cool. But that's what happens right here, because when God is overly generous to us, his people tend to be overly generous in return, almost too generous. God is exalted when we give to him. God is exalted when we give to him. We have an opportunity every Sunday morning to have a free will offering to him. Nobody's looking over your shoulder. Nobody's counting whatever you put in the plate. That's between you and God. It's not an obligation. We don't put the heavy pressure on you every Sunday, and I loom down at you, and the ushers kind of glare at you. We're giving you an opportunity simply to worship the way God has moved your heart. And if God moves your heart to give freely, give freely. God moves you any way you want, just follow that. And in this giving, we are welcomed into the ministry of God. We are part of it. We are taking what God has given us and just giving a part back to him for the use of his work in this world. Because if you are not living and you are not working for eternity, your accomplishments in the end won't mean very much. They really won't.